David Bohm, Seminar Series 1, November 8th, 1987, 5:15 session, Oak Grove School, Ojai, California.
Well, recalling about this self-world image, it's not just a picture sitting there, but it's full of value judgments which give it tremendous dynamic power and move you inside your whole body, which helps to create the impression of this reality of whatever the image is about, right? That because there's so much power in this image, it helps, and it's sustained. It resists change and so on. Therefore, it passes the test for reality. It's not so easy to see that it is an image, right? And you see that because otherwise you would ask the question, why should a picture have such a powerful effect? You see, but this picture is not just a drawing or a photograph. It has much more in it, right? And one of the points is, you see that it's defended. We said that it has supreme value. The word I am suggests that. That's what it really means. And you see, because it's tremendous and it covers all, that would give it tremendous value and very great power. And therefore it's defended, you see, as I said, when some thought comes in that might shake this or make it look not so good, there's an automatic defense to get rid of that thought, to deny it, and to put another thought in there that would support it, right? That's the self-deception that we've been talking about. And the one of the parts of the self-deception is just the observer-observed image. You see, the self-world image contains within it the possibility of splitting in two. Not only the self and the world, right? Saying that there is a self which is looking at the world, right? And you experience it that way. And which is an imitation of what we actually perceive with objects, in the world, right? Now, so you have this self-world image, but then you may make the split further in. You see, this split can be made anywhere. At the skin, maybe include your country or your family. Or it may go inward and say, I'm looking at my hand. My hand is now what I'm looking at, right? And I, who I'm looking at, different from my hand, and I can move my hand, do various things about my hand. You go further and further inward and say, I have problems, I can look at my feelings, and so on. So the self-world image contains this split between the observer and the observed, right? Which is learned in the culture, and it's rather natural to make it anyway. And then that split is fatal because, you see, it means you can never get the thing straight from there on. You will constantly try to correct the self-world image rather than correct the fact, right? And that's still more self-deception.
In order to say I am, you have to say I am in relationship to something.
Yes, that's right. So it's only the self, it's only the whole that is, right? See, that's what the statement in the Old Testament meant, that only I am actually is, right? I am being the name of God. You see, there was no word in Hebrew for is, actually. The present tense of the verb to be does not exist, right? So you would say this chair, right? And this is a chair, right? You have the future and the past, right? Now, but insofar as you imply I am, then it implies eternal being, right? And and therefore that had to be in the name of God, right? That's really what it means implicitly, right? If you have the notion of God, that's what God means, right? Eternal being, eternal universal being, right? That which is the source of all, right?
Something that's beyond.
Yeah. So that's a notion that was bound to occur to people. It's already always implicit, and therefore it's bound to create this confusion that the word I am also represents the individual person, right?
Saying that I imbue myself with the image of
the first step is you already imbue yourself with that power, giving yourself the value of the totality. And then the next step is to say that it is this limited thing which has the value of the totality.
To say I am says that it is the supreme thing, and
yes.
Everything else is subservient.
But if I say I am X, I am limited. I am here, I am a certain person, I am a carpenter or whatever. You see, I think at one of the seminars, I don't know what we said. you see, if you say I am an accountant, then you could equally well say God is an accountant. Right? But then if you say God is not an accountant, it also is rather silly, right? In other words, to relate those two concepts has no meaning, right? Because it's the totality. But you see, we have brought in two things together that can't go together, namely the unlimited being, total, and something limited, right?
Limited in that it says it's separate.
Well, it's different from other things. It has boundaries. It's one thing and not another, right?
The way it gets to be that thing is by saying I am.
Well, I am gives it the general being, and then you connect that with the particular being, right?
Those are all sub.
Yeah, you could say this chair is metal, you see. So we say chair is a general category, and metal gives it a particular meaning, right? You could say I am whatever, right? I am an accountant, right? And so I am connects it to the totally general, unrestricted being, the totality of all that is, was, and ever will be, right? And then you are an accountant. This is an accountant, right?
It seems to me that I am separates you from the whole.
But the word I am by itself cannot separate. You see, only when you say what I am will you get separate. In a way, you could say, if you were animistic, as people were in the earlier times, you could say everything, if it could talk, would say I am, right?
What if I say I am alive?
I am alive, that's all right. But you see, then there's also death. There's also death, right? Then you would have to say God is dead, right? As well as God is alive. I say I am.
I don't see the connection.
What?
I don't see the connection between I am and God.
Oh, just simply they mean the same thing. What does God mean?
I don't know.
Well, it means, it has come to mean, and probably at first it was some tremendous projection of the human being, but it came to mean the totality, you see, the whole, the source of everything, right?
All right, okay.
Now, I am by itself has that sort of value, right? If you say I am without saying whatever anything else, it's unqualified. It's the generative source of being. Do you see what it means?
I'm trying to think about saying I am without qualifying it.
You see, if you say the word water, you see this body of water, that example of water, right? But suppose we just use the word water. It means the general concept from which generates water, right? All notion of water.
Why would the whole ever say I am?
Because I exist.
You're saying I am, so what does it mean? It means you are. You exist. You see, you have being, right?
It means just that, being. Just being.
It's the personal form of saying it. You see, you can say this is, but when you apply it as a subject to say, you say I am, right? You can also say this person is, meaning the same thing, but...
Is it the voice of what is?
What?
Is it the voice of what is?
That's what's implied, isn't it? You see, that is, if you try to understand what... I'm not saying any of this is right or wrong, I'm just trying to say, what does it mean, right?
Well, let's say you didn't have any concept about God or believe in him.
It would still have that power if you just use the word I am. You see, that's what it means.
But is that so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you say, if you were to say I am, you see, for example, people might feel, except that they know better, that they live forever and that they would, as an infant, might feel he would essentially encompass everything and have all power and so on. The first sense of being would be of that nature before you restrict it. You see, people do not understand death, right? There's no way within the structure of thought to understand it, right? Yeah. The limitation, right, of that kind. You see that the whole self-world image contains everything, right?
I seem to have reached the edge of my understanding. I better be quiet.
No.
Doesn't Jehovah mean I am?
Yeah, it means I am, yeah.
Jehovah means I am, and that's
you see, suppose somebody says, I am, they say, you're not the great I am, you see. I am the great king, you see. I am the king of kings. I am the greatest. You see, who was it who said that? Muhammad Ali. You see, why should he bother to say I am the greatest, the best, the most wonderful, the highest? And then see, the king likes to be told, you're the greatest king, you're the exalted king of kings. It creates a certain feeling, right, of power, right? What it means. It has tremendous value. And you see, if I am limited in any way, then I would have to say I am this or this or this, right? But as I remove those limits, I get more and more extension and power in the concept.
And the definition was created by man, right?
Right.
The I am definition grew out of man's
It grew out of thought, you see, but I'm saying that, but this thought has that sort of meaning implicit in it. That, you see, why is it that there is so much egotism, you see, when it makes no sense at all? You see that there's some reason why everybody feels that I am is of supreme value, right?
Is it the
I thought
same?
you were saying it was of supreme.
No, I'm saying this is the way the words work. You see, we have to be careful. But I mean, when the people first said it, they believed it and said that's the way it is, right? I'm neither saying it is or it isn't. I'm really saying that's the way it works.
They believed it so much that they said God said it.
Yes, they believed there was no that was God and so on. But that doesn't concern us at the moment, right? See, what concerns us is the power of the concept of this kind of the self, right?
Is the ego what makes us ask so many questions?
Well, but this is the ego, you see. The point is that the power of the ego is this power in the concept of I am, which, however, we then find ourselves to be limited, and there's a tremendous contradiction, right? And what are we going to do? You see, we try to deny those limits, right? Deceiving ourselves.
Is it the same of the Hindus, Soham?
Yeah, it has, I think, the same meaning, yeah. It's an old concept which probably everybody has. And and I wanted to say there's tremendous power in this notion I am, though we don't notice it. It has a tremendous value, right? If you imagine somebody out in the desert sort of asserting his being, shouting, I am, right? Against the elements. Huh?
It would be pretty insignificant.
Yeah, but he would feel that here I am, right? He is sort of asserting himself against the whole of infinity, right?
Okay.
And and that's what's implicit in this notion. You see, now, and the self-world image takes that quality, right?
Aren't we all sort of miniature or greater manic depressive? A manic will, have delusions of
Yeah, well, then he gets disappointed. But then you get, he says, I am the greatest and I am the lowest. It just flip-flops, right? You see, there's no fundamental change.
You're saying, if I am, how can I have all these problems?
Yeah, how can I be so limited? You see, suppose you say, I am the great king of kings, but it turns out I've got problems, and there's another king of kings over there who may defeat me, right? And I've got problems, right? It's not merely that I may be defeated, but inside of me something terrible will happen, right?
Because I really believe it.
Yeah, and I need it.
And then I act upon the world as if it's true and start...
Or else I say it must be made to be true.
So when we talk about a person being crazy, you might say, I'm the king, but you look at him and know he's not the king, and you say he's crazy.
Yeah.
But he's still got that feeling,
Yeah.
which is really akin to the feeling we have. He's just taken it to the limits we can notice.
It takes beyond the limits that society accepts, right? Whereas you see, in the case of Hitler, society accepted it altogether, right? You see, so it's somewhat of a fortuitous accident how far society will go with that. But now...
Isn't that the outward expression of taking it as far as society will allow it to go inwardly? It seems that we take that even further than someone who thinks that they're the king of kings.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that if you think of someone who's fanatical in their belief in God, it seems that the analogy, that's what we do inside ourselves. And we think each one of us is God.
That's implicitly and tacitly. Right? We wouldn't dare to even say it to ourselves, well, for the most part, but still that's the thought, right? Yeah.
Very fanaticism arises from this very strong feeling that I have that something is so.
Yeah.
the French philosopher says, I think, therefore I am. And it's still the particular.
Yes, but you see, that he was saying that the basic quality of being is thinking. He meant by that, and which would say God is basically a thinker, whereas the other people say God is this or God is that. See, an intellectual might be inclined to say God is a thinker. You see,
The beginning was a word.
what?
The Bible says in the beginning was a word.
Well, that could have many meanings, you see. But now suppose we say that you see it's all tied together. This whole question, you see, of self-deception of the observer and the observed, the values and the self-world image. It's all functioning in one whole, right? With society, and the culture, and religion, and power, political power, and everything else, right? And now. See, but I think that aside from this rather peculiar problem of language and so on, there is something deeper in the sense that the human being has a genuine need for some contact with the cosmic or the unlimited, right? That it is not just purely invention or imagination or so on. So I would suggest that. And now, that there is a cosmic need or dimension within the human being, that all these things have been sort of confusions around perversions of it, you see, that people have tried to get it out of thought, right? One form or another, and imagination and so on. And so it may be, you see, that also if we take value judgments, you see, if we say one value depends on another, you say telephones are valuable because we can talk to each other, but what is the value of talking to each other because we can do this, and that? What is the value of that because we can do that? We never come to the end, right? We seem to have no foundation for values. I'm trying to say, but those who are religious say they've got a foundation. God is the supreme value, and everything flows from that. We may not accept that, you see, but nevertheless, the question is still there. Is there a value beyond the values that thought can assign? We sort of hinted at that when discussing viewing art and things like that. Right? Now, so let's call it the unlimited. You see, that is, I am implies the unlimited, but as soon as you attach another modifier to it, it implies the limited, right? And we have the problem of bringing the limited and the unlimited together. That seems to be the problem. You see, the trouble is thought tries to do this, and therefore thought tries to reach into the area of the unlimited. Now I say that is where no place for thought in the unlimited. Thought may have all sorts of places, but it cannot deal with the unlimited. That's what I'm saying. That now, if there is the unlimited, thought cannot deal with it. Thought is based on the past, on memory and so on a certain amount of knowledge which is limited, and so on. So it may extend its limits, go on and on and on, new discoveries, all sorts of things. But there is still the unlimited. Now, and it seems the human being has this intense need to have some contact with the unlimited and creates these illusory contacts in order to apparently satisfy that need, right? Thus deceiving himself or herself. And the point is that we now have to consider this issue of the unlimited. We also cannot see where the foundation of value judgments would be in anything limited. Now, so could there be the unlimited? You see, now perhaps I'll try to go through some argument. It may sound a little. You have to watch it carefully, but it may sound a little abstract. I'm going to say that when we talk about the limited, thought establishes limitation. You see, thought establishes boundaries and makes judgments about the limits, right? Which may be correct or incorrect. If I say this object is limited by its boundaries, it's a correct judgment. If we say this country is limited by its boundaries, it may not be a correct judgment, right? Now, therefore, one of the basic features, in fact, its most essential feature, is that thought. Anytime thought says anything, it establishes a limitation, right? It says it's this and not that. That's the very nature of a judgment. In German, the word for judgment is Urteil, meaning original division, or original limitation, right? So the point is that you have this limitation, you see. Now, and thought is its basic quality, its basic activity is limitation, you see. And then it tries to unite the limit, to go beyond the limit and unite things and so on, but it will still establish another limit when it does so. Now, now I'm going to ask a question, you see. Take this whole process of limitation. Suppose I say that there's nothing but the limited, right? That's one view. The unlimited is an illusion. We're good, hard-nosed, solid people. We assert that there's nothing but the limited, which we can grasp, right? Now, and then I say, obviously, thought is going to grasp it by the process of establishing limits, which I'll call limitation. So I'm going to ask myself a question. On the basis of those assumptions, is the limitation itself limited? The whole process. Now, you see, there's going to be a very difficult paradox here, because I'm going to say, suppose limitation is limited, right? It applies to everything, or say, yes. And suppose I'll begin limitation. Limitation is either limited or unlimited, right? That's the two possibilities. I prefer to start with the assumption. Limitation is unlimited. It applies to everything, which we've said, everything is limited. It also must apply to limitation. Therefore, limitation is limited, right? But suppose I turn it the other way. I make the opposite assumption, and I say, limitation is limited. It applies to everything, and it also applies to limitation. There's nothing else left, so it's unlimited. Yeah, you see, I'm saying you cannot adopt either position. I say limitation is either limited or unlimited. That's all that's possible. Everything is limited, I say. All thoughts are limited. It's all limited. Objects. And then I say, suppose one of the possibilities is limitation is unlimited. Right? It just goes on and on. But then it applies to everything. It must apply to limitation too. Therefore, from that we deduce that limitation is limited in contradiction to our starting point, right? Therefore, if we deduce a conclusion that contradicts our starting point, we say the whole thing collapses, right? Now, therefore, that means we should go to the opposite assumption, right? Do people find? Is anybody understanding this?
Yeah.
I said it was going to look abstract.
Blackboard.
Yeah, you mean need a blackboard, but I'll repeat it once again just to help, right? I say that everything is limited. That's our assumption. And I say, but I notice the process of thought, its essential feature is to establish limits, which I call limitation. And then I say either this process itself, which is a real process, it's either limited or unlimited. I begin with, suppose it's unlimited, right? If it's unlimited, it applies to everything, that's all right. It also applies to itself, because otherwise there would be a limit, right? Therefore, I deduce that limitation is limited, though I started with the assumption that limitation is unlimited. Right? Therefore, that assumption must collapse. Right? Then I take the opposite assumption. Okay? The limitation is limited. And limitation applies to everything by our original assumption. It also applies to itself, we've just said. Therefore, limitation is applied to everything. And therefore, it's unlimited. So I say, well, I can neither say that limitation is limited, nor can I say it's unlimited. That seems really a nice paradox.
Can we take the quantum leap from that?
Well, there's a logical step yet, you see. So first to appreciate the paradox, right? Now, if you have a paradox, that means some assumption in your reasoning may be false, right? Now, what is the assumption we've made? That everything is limited. What? Well, we said only limitation is unlimited, you see. we're trying to say, we get into trouble about saying everything is limited. We can't seem to say it.
Because in the moment we say everything, it's already unlimited. No?
Yes, that's right, but we are in a paradox by trying to say it. That's all I'm saying, but I've demonstrated the paradox, you see. That everything, you cannot make sense of the statement that everything is limited. The assumption that everything is limited has collapsed. Yeah.
But you would say any particular thing is limited.
Yes, but the sum of everything, I assume, is the sum of all particular things. I mean, that's this way of reasoning, you see. The hard-nosed, hard-headed way of reasoning is we've got all these particular things and they're all limited. There's nothing else. The world is nothing, existence and reality are nothing, and truth are nothing but this, you see. And that's the good, hard-headed approach, you see. But it collapses, right, by logic, right?
When you say everything is limited, do you mean also to apply that to ideas?
Oh yes, thoughts are things in this view. They're part of reality, right? Otherwise you would have to say that only you are not covering all existence, right?
So then you extend it to ideas. You say
Yeah.
all ideas are limited.
Yeah. And I say the essence of thought is to establish limits, whether of material things or ideas or anything. Right? We can think about ideas too.
So would it follow to say if everything is unlimited and thought is limited, then thought isn't everything? Is that what
No, what we can say now is the way out of this paradox is just simply to say there is the unlimited. Now you will see there's no problem, because I say limitation is limited by the fact that there is the unlimited. It still applies to itself, that limitation is limited. Right?
The unlimited is unknown.
Yes. And also you can take one more step. You say, is the unlimited disconnected from the limited, right? That would be, but we'll say, in that case it would be limited by not being the unlimited. By not being the limited, right? And therefore we see that the unlimited must overlap and include the limited.
And the unknown.
The unknown includes the known, and the unlimited includes the limited, right? See, we're not trying to say there is this nice sphere of the known, and outside there somewhere else is God, the unlimited, right? Saying that the unlimited must include the limited. In contacting the limited, we are still in the unlimited. The real being of the limited is the unlimited.
And the unlimited is without thought, David?
Is what?
Would the unlimited be beyond thought?
Well, but thought is limitation, and it is limited, so it can't be thought. It follows logically, right? It has to be. It has followed logically, you see. You see.
Go ahead, Sarah.
David, could the phrase "I am" be the unlimited?
Well, that's what it could mean. I am could mean the unlimited. You see, that's a suggestion. You see what I'm trying to say? The true I am. That's one approach. You see, but we'll leave that out for the moment and just say that there is the unlimited. The unlimited is right, and the unlimited includes the limited. Therefore, in the limited, you contact the unlimited.
Krishnaji was always asking this question: what is the relationship between?
Yeah.
Is this the same?
It's a similar question. You see, it's a related question, almost the same. That from the unlimited is related to the limited. It contains it, right? The limited, if you abstract it, has no relation to the unlimited, right?
But it's again.
If you abstract the limited in your mind as if it existed independently, it cannot be related to the unlimited, right?
But it exists within the limited, the unlimited. The
Yeah.
limited exists within the unlimited.
It's part of the unlimited, right?
Even if there's no relationship. Right?
No, the unlimited is related, and therefore to the limited, right? But the limited does not actually exist as an independent being. You see that it exists only in your abstraction of thought.
And would you say that the unlimited is order?
It could be order. It's the source of order, certainly. It's the source of all, right? It's the origin of all. It's this, in this stream we were talking about of the generative order, it's the ultimate origin and the ultimate end of everything, right?
So are you saying that the limited is abstracted from the unlimited?
By thought.
By thought.
Because
And
thought is the
therefore,
process of limitation.
But the true reality, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah, the true being would be better.
The true being of the limited
Is the unlimited.
is unknown.
It's unknown, but it is grounded in the unlimited.
Yeah, so we never grasp the. We think we've got the the thing, the limited.
Yeah.
We took the thing in itself, but the thing in itself.
We don't grasp it in thought, you see. That is, we're not saying there may not be another way, but we're saying thought by its very operation cannot do it because it consists of, establishing limits.
We say the only place limits exist are in thought?
Yes, the actual existence of limits is in thought. They're an abstraction. You can see an example of this. That suppose we say this object is limited. Take the atomic theory. It's made of atoms, and near the edge it would be rather hazy limits. If you went down into still deeper levels of physics, you would find the limits got hazier and hazier. You see, it's mostly empty space and a few atoms here, a small concentration of atoms, and you would say, where does one begin and the other end? You see, it's due to our perception of this in a certain way and our thinking of it in a certain way that we think it's limited, right? That's a useful way to think, but it does not get at its true being, right?
That may be the function of thought.
Yeah, it is the function of thought to think that way, to deal with things that way, right? And they're correct up to a point, right? That will lead to right action.
The thought may be a natural apparatus that gives rise to a way to operate in the world in a sensible manner.
Yes, provided it's operating rationally and it doesn't try to move into the wrong area. You see, if thought tries to grasp the unlimited, then it is going to be incapable of making value judgments correctly, because the unlimited will have supreme value.
That's the mean, right?
Yeah.
The mean that we all have.
Yeah.
We give that unlimited value.
The self-image, the self-world image takes the unlimited value, right? You see, so, and therefore value judgments become totally irrational and arbitrary and destructive, right?
So what you're saying is that the self-image is the abstract. It's the limited from the unlimited.
Yes.
It's the abstract.
Every image is limited, right?
As you've used the analogy before of the whirlpool, of the vortex from the water.
Yes.
The form that isn't separate, but it appears to be something.
You can abstract it. You see, I'll explain that. Some people may not have heard it. If you have water in a vortex, a whirlpool flowing around, you can say there is a whirlpool, right? That suggests it's a separate object, but it isn't. You see, it's nothing but a pattern of movement. It doesn't begin or end anywhere. And if you put another vortex in there, they sort of merge. And the point is then that however thought abstracts that vortex and says, here is the vortex and there's the rest of the water, right? But yeah.
May I get that clear once more? So limited exists within the unlimited.
The limited is within is contained in the unlimited. That's it.
Unlimited. And what has no relationship to the other? So
well, no, wait. The unlimited is related to the limited because it contains it, right? And everything, the limited depends on the unlimited, right?
The limited depends on the unlimited.
Because it's like floating in the unlimited. If you want to make an image, it's sort of a very tenuous structure floating in the unlimited, right?
But it thinks it comes alone, no?
What?
It thinks it's the limited thinks it comes
That's right.
alone.
Yeah, the limited only sees itself and does not see the unlimited. You see, it's like the fish swims in the ocean and does not see the ocean. It only sees the other fish. Says that's all there is, right?
So are you saying that energy is limited?
Energy is the unlimited, but there are limited forms of energy, right?
Are you saying the whole phenomenal world then is the limited?
Yeah.
So
are you saying
what we're talking about then is the ground is the unlimited?
The ground is the unlimited, and the source of energy is the unlimited, the ultimate source, right?
And the ground is movement?
It's
Not
movement.
us.
It's movement, energy, it's, you can say things about it, but they're not really very accurate, you see, so.
Movement is unlimited?
What?
Movement?
The ultimate movement, the ground of movement is unlimited, right?
That's moving.
It's energy, right?
Dynamic.
The energy, you see, the word energy is a Greek word. It really means work from within, right? That something from the ground is working in the phenomenal world, right?
Gives the impression that's from here to there.
What?
Movement.
Well, but we can take movement in a more general sense. You see, for example, you talk of the movement of a symphony. You see, there's nothing moving. You could put the symphony orchestra on a train and say it's moving. But that's not what you mean by movement of a symphony, right?
Is everything you mean by limited constructed by thought?
Yes, thought establishes limitation. You see, that's its function.
So whatever you say or think about the unlimited has to be limited.
Yes, if you begin to give it qualities, it has to be limited, you see. But we say, in order for thought to be consistent, it has to admit there is the unlimited, that's all. But from there on, it starts to get in trouble if it begins to say too much, right?
And the ego is just thought.
Yes.
I think, therefore I am.
Yes, the ego is thought, but it's thought which makes value judgments and has dynamic power and does, it has the observer and the observed and all those things in it, right?
Without thinking, I wouldn't be knowing.
We don't know, you see, without thinking, you see, but let's say what is without thinking, we cannot know in the ordinary sense of knowledge, right? But so therefore we're saying there is the unlimited, and ultimately value must flow from the unlimited, right? Otherwise there's no ground for value, right?
If thought comes up with this value, then it's limited and it's not.
Well, thought will define the value and make a judgment of it, and then it's limited, right?
I don't know what you mean that value is flow.
Well, I'm saying we have this problem that if we have no ground to value at present, we say one value leads to another, which leads to another, and it's all arbitrary, right? And see, one of the modern trends is relativism of values, whereas in the past they used to say values are absolute, they come from God. But if you don't accept that, then you say values are relative. So we say, where are we? You see, that if all values are relative, then ultimately there's no ground to them, and it might be as well be one as another. So that creates a problem. You can't function that way. But actually, you don't have to have that problem, because if you suppose that ultimately values are perceived and the perception of value is from the unlimited.
Yes, but what does that mean? Because if you define that value in thought...
Well, yes, but we're saying before you define it, it's perceived and acts, right? In order to communicate it, we may define it, but then it's limited, right? We may try to suggest something unlimited by our communication. You see, the communication cannot be literal.
David, let me just think a minute. We said that there was movement in the unlimited.
Well, a kind of movement, but not the kind which moves from here to there, right?
And if there is movement in the unlimited, we are all part of that movement, and we're all part of that unlimited.
Well, that would suggest everything visible phenomenally and experienceable is in the unlimited in some sense.
And we're in movement.
Yes, we are movement in a way. That without this movement, we would cease to be, right?
And that would be life.
Yes, it's life, but this movement. See, but time is a limitation too, isn't it? The distinction of past, present, and future, now and then, and so on.
But that's not in the unlimited.
Well, you see, but time as we experience it is an abstraction of thought, right? So we'd have to suggest that the unlimited cannot be comprehended in terms of the concept of time.
Right. So what is there? Energy?
We call it energy, if you like, but if we get to be too definite about it, we're starting to limit it, right?
Right.
So we have to be very careful not to be too definite, you see.
What would you call it?
Well, we call it the unlimited.
Okay.
I mean, that's one name you could use.
Okay.
And therefore, if it has movement, its movement cannot be put within limits, you see. But part of its movement is to act in what we call the limited, right? And but the ultimate ground of the limited is the unlimited. The true being of the limited is its origin is the unlimited, right? And therefore, and I said that I'm suggesting this might be a way of getting out of this bind about values, right? That the true perception of values does not start from anything limited, right? Or the true perception of anything. What?
Then everything would have that. Because it all comes from the value.
Yeah, but the value would be perceived as it is, not by arbitrary value judgment.
Then all things, like some people say all things are sacred, or all things are alive, or all things would be saying that they're all a manifestation of this ground, which is the ground of value. Therefore, everything would have value.
In a way, you could say that, and in addition, for certain functional purposes, you could discuss values, and you see, and saying that this will be useful for that, and so on.
We're not talking about the value given to it by thought.
Yeah.
See, thought is really nothing calling something that for the sake of being able for us to operate in the world. That's all it is. There's no reality to it.
Yeah, but you see, for example, we can see now that there are priorities in these values in the sense that certain things have to be seen now about this mod before the other values could be appreciated, right?
Even thought is part of the unlimited.
Part is the true being of thought is the unlimited, right? Insofar as thought is a real process, it must have its being the same as any other real thing, right?
It's that it is appropriated some kind of energy and saying that what it thinks is unlimited.
Yes, it forms the image of the unlimited, right?
Which is limited.
Yeah.
We've established that.
Is that image of unlimited contained in the self-world image?
Yeah. You see that not only the sense of infinite space and so on, but some sense of infinite importance, infinite value, and also people find it very hard to project that they are limited in time, right? Implicitly, the self-world image is unlimited. Yeah. You cannot imagine before you were born or after you are dead, right? You can't form that image.
Is the present unlimited?
Yes. You see.
That in this present moment
exists on
yeah.
the unlimited.
Yes, every moment is the unlimited, you see, and the past is part of the present, right? The activity of the past is part of the present.
And the present then would be what's the word I want to? The present then
contains the past and the future.
What?
The present contains the past and the future.
Yeah.
But you said before once that time is a successive existence.
Yes.
And then you said space is a coexistence.
Yes.
That stuck with me.
That's Leibniz.
I finally understood.
It's unlimited.
I finally wanted to say then the present moment is eternity.
Yes, you can say that the present moment is eternity in the sense. See that, but to realize that, is the question. You see that. The past is now active in the present and creating the image of that our basic existence is in time, right? Well, eternity is not time, you see.
It's not time?
No, you see, but it can be taken as time, you see, and that's what it means, but it also can be taken to mean in the generative order, the order which is timeless, you see.
But to come into contact with this genuine unlimited requires to suspend the false unlimited.
Yes.
Suspend the self-world view.
That's it, which includes time. The self-world view would be impossible without the concept of time.
So is there consciousness as we know it without...
Well, that is consciousness as we know it, yes, so it wouldn't necessarily...
So there's no consciousness as we know it without the limited.
Yes, it is limitation. The consciousness as we know it is, its content is limitation, right?
So there's another kind of consciousness.
There may be, yeah. That's the suggestion. You see, we haven't got to it, but we're saying this is an exploration, suggesting what may be, what's worth inquiring into, right?
If there was a consciousness besides this limit, it would be the consciousness of the unlimited.
Yeah, it would be the unlimited being conscious of itself, right?
The unlimited might be conscious.
Yeah.
But what's going on now? Are we making this? Aren't we starting to limit?
Well, if we go too far in this direction, we will begin to introduce limitation. You see, you have to be careful. We need some analysis of this to get clear what the language is saying.
Yes.
And we have to be careful, very careful not to go too far in that.
You're saying that to suspend the self-world image requires suspending time.
Well, thought and time are essentially one process, you see.
As ego is.
What?
Ego,
yeah.
is.
You see, thought not only takes time, but its essential content is time, right? The whole process. And everything that you can think of as existing exists in this sequence of time. And and you cannot imagine yourself as beginning. You say everything begins and ends, but you cannot imagine the universe beginning or ending. And you cannot imagine yourself beginning or ending, right? Now, you see, you may say, for example, some children may project back and imagine a time before, they try to imagine a history before and so on, because that is a disturbing problem that you can't trace yourself back. People want to trace back their ancestry and so on. And then you try to project forward that you will live forever or something will go on forever. It's part of the image. You see, the image demands it, right, for its consistency. And yet you can't really do it because there's so much evidence that conflicts with it.
If we're in the present, and the present is eternity, then there's harmony here at this moment with this group.
But there's no point in saying that unless you can see the falseness. We don't see the falseness of the present being enmeshed in this time image.
Well, you see, up to a point, this present, it's correct to, and analyze it in a certain area of the limited, right? But if we're bringing in the unlimited, this analysis won't hold, right? Now, so let's look at this question of time a little bit. You see that we have, according to time, there's the division of past, present, and future, right? The present being the line between past and future. And we think it's moving along. Right?
Time is a movement.
Yeah. And so it's moving along, and we are involved in this movement, right? We are moving with this movement, right? All right, so we have that movement, right? Now then, but then we can look at it another way and say, what about the past? It's gone. It doesn't, it's really nothing. The future is not yet, it doesn't exist. You would say from that view there's nothing but the present, or if you say the present is a dividing line of past and future, it divides what doesn't exist from what doesn't exist, so it cannot exist, right? But therefore you must look at it another way. It doesn't make sense that way. And suppose you say the present is what is, right? It contains the past as the activity of what has been, right? What has been does not exist, but its activity is present and active. And when thought is overwhelmingly powerful, it seems to fill our consciousness, right? So we are living in the past. We are living in the response of the past to what is, right? To what is actual. And now the future is only potential. You see, the future is. You see, you could say that the ground, in some sense, is this future. You see that the future is not here. You see that the future is, in some sense, the future is in the present, right? What we do now, if we go on with thought now, we are going to go on with it in the future. And okay, so now I'm trying to see. I'll try to give an image. It might help. I was discussing the order of succession. So let's imagine that drawn on a horizontal line, right? We call that time, right? A graph. Now I'm going to suggest a generative order, the order in which, like in the stream, going back to the source. I'll draw that in the vertical direction. Now, if in a mechanical process it's moving horizontally, right? There would be a purely creative process in which something suddenly was created and never continued. So it would be just a flash, right? In the vertical direction. But say an actual process may move in some direction in between, right? With some creation and some mechanical, right? Now, so to understand, now our attention can move into the mechanical order, or it could move into the order between, or it could move toward the extreme, right? In which we did not consider continuity. Now it all depends on attention, right? And attention is blocked by a thought which says that it's got to be always time. So
the present contains the past and the future. Our thinking is always in the present. Even if it deals with past events,
yeah.
We remember it now.
That's right. The thinking is now.
Yeah.
The thinking is now, but still, the question is, where does our attention go? Attention is directed by thought, right? Now, if we think of the world as mechanical, as just moving in succession, that's where our attention will go, and we will see it that way, right? We are looking at an abstraction which is determined by thought, right? Your attention will go according to what your thought says is important or valuable, right? If you say that the time is all there is, then that's where attention must go. Now, if you explore the notion that that's not all, then there might be an order between where something was being created and something was being recreated with something, and then the extreme of that would be the present moment, right? Which would be not to consider the recreation of the past, you see. But to put attention not into the recreation process, to say, from that view, anything which exists is constantly recreated, right? Similar. But then our attention may be on the recreation process, or it could move toward the creation alone, right? That in this moment, we are not going to give primary value to recreation, but just look at the moment, right? Which will include the past, right? As thought, right? As the actual process of thought. And therefore, it would be possible then for attention to move into a timeless dimension. Because even though from the other point of view time is passing, that is irrelevant in this mode of attention.
And timelessness is eternity.
Yeah. Timelessness is eternity, not eternal existence in time, you see, from that view. So now that would mean, see, however, our attention consciousness have to move into time in order to do all sorts of things, right? Or to move in between to do some other things. And so we have to have this freedom of attention, which is now captured and restricted by thought, right? By limitation. And attention can do almost anything. It has no restriction, right? That's what I said, yeah. But it can be nevertheless restricted because the brain won't allow it, right? Because it's the thought going in a certain way. And now this needs to be explored. You see, we're suggesting the purpose of bringing this out is to show something else is possible. Now that is of crucial importance, right? If we say nothing else is possible, you've got absolute necessity, unyielding feeling, and you're stuck, right? So merely to show, although we're using thought, we are showing within thought that something else is possible.
So eternity is not infinite time.
No.
It is timelessness.
Timelessness, yeah.
And it's at the present moment, here and now.
Yeah.
It couldn't be any other time. If eternity was some other time, how could it be eternity?
Past or future. Yes, you see, if we put it in all time, then that's not it. And if we put it into the future, saying we are going to achieve it, that's not it. You see, that becomes a false process.
And it contains all things, like love, truth.
Yeah. See, and values and so on, the proper perception of what is really important and so on, and what really should have priority and all that.
It even contains the perception of what isn't correct.
Yeah.
All the false perceptions we have are also part of it.
Yes, it contains, it puts the things in the right order, you see. Now, and therefore the thing can go straight, you see, now. But we do have to go through quite a bit of work on understanding this other process within its own terms, right?
So you have invited us into eternity.
Well, I don't know if I invited you. It's a question of whether you find it inviting.
Is it likened to the analogy of the symphony? The symphony before it gets on the train?
Well, you see, that's the confusion. If you say the movement of a symphony is its movement through space, then you would put the orchestra on the train, right? Mm-hmm. Say the symphony is in movement. But you see, that is not what is meant by the movement of a symphony, right?
The music or the dance is before you get on the train.
Yeah. It's there even before it's done, you see.
Infinity is in coexistence of all things.
Well, it's all in the unknown. It's in the unlimited, right? All limited things are in the unlimited, right? So we don't deny the reality of these things, but we say they have a certain kind of reality. Thought can abstract them, and this will be a correct representation, right? But the mistake is to say that is all there is, which makes them the unlimited, right? And you see, ultimately thought has got in this problem that it does not know what to do about limitation and the unlimited, and gets all caught up in it. And there is a genuine need of human beings to come to contact to the unlimited. And you see, the attempt to just say we're hard-headed people who we know our limitations and we'll stick to them, it never can work, right?
Music, beauty, and art and stuff like that are somehow related. Like I think about music and you talk about movement. Well, actually music, there's nothing moving.
Oh, that's right.
But there's a sense of movement.
That's right.
Sense of and that sense, and the reason music seems to be so profound for everybody, is because it's coming out of that same source. And same with art. When you talk about art, true or beauty, it has that quality that isn't limited by thought. I mean, there's no movement. There's nothing happening in music, and yet there's this great sense of something.
Physiologically, there is a type of movement, though, that exists in music, because by nature and by definition, any vibration has...
But that's not the movement we sense.
No,
that could be just noise.
The sound, whether it's noise or music or whatever, the sound that you sense, if you have just the diaphragm in your ear at a given point in space and time in terms of a sequential event, that's not music. Music is made up of a sequence of those, whereby you hear the different...
But it's not music. I'm talking about the response to music.
Yeah, well, suppose we say that it's the meaning of the music. You see, meaning is not in the sphere of ordinary movement, right? But ultimately, not ultimately. Value, meaning, whatever you want to call it, you see, and a significance. And
we could say that listening also is not of time.
Yeah. You listen for the meaning, right?
Right. We could also say, perhaps, that observation or attention is not of time.
Yeah, so I tried to say attention is not of time, though it can be restricted to time by thought, but it's not fundamentally of time. Right? And even in the television set, you see all this movement going on, but it's not moving, right? I mean, if you can see an automobile crossing the screen, but nothing crosses the screen. And you can see a clock turning, but there's no time in that clock, right? Right? You watch the clock in the television image, but it isn't really time. It's not really moving. That hand, the image of a hand is moving in an image of time, right? You say there's a deeper movement, you see, which builds it all up, and that provides a sort of an image. Say there's a movement we cannot grasp, you see, out of which this movement may perhaps come, but the movement which underlies it is of a totally different quality from the movement that you experience, right? Through space, you see, and so on. So that's the suggestion. Now the question is, can attention turn toward that? You see, include that, and now we can't really, in this short time, do justice to it. See, because we're not saying time is totally irrelevant or anything, because as we do things, it becomes relevant. So we may be moving between those limits, those extreme, either pure timelessness or time, and in different phases of life. You see, see, we couldn't live if we stayed entirely in the timeless, right? You see, because then we wouldn't pay any attention to time, and we wouldn't do the things that have to be done. You see, so we are always moving between, right? But our civilization has tended to move us toward time as the main thing, right? As the primary value, and in that way it's distorted. Say time is of the essence, they say. Time is money, don't waste time, and so on, right? It has very high value. And that means that we are moved by the notion of time, you see. So
you have to have chronological time.
What?
You have to have chronological time.
We have to have that, and we have all kinds of time. Yeah, we have to pay attention to time, but we can't live in all the time, always at time. When I put it that way, and that really is the point. Now, I don't know if we can get very much further in this now. You see, we must not over-define it, because we will get it back into the sphere of the limited. And you see, there's nothing we can use this for. It won't solve any problems. And any more than a great work of art would solve problems. You see, or music, or the thing is that, nevertheless, I think that if we pay serious attention to this, it will work, right?
It's unlimited, there's no division.
No, there's not. We're saying
the absence of division is love, isn't it?
Yes, and it has to be no division, because division is limitation. Right?
Yeah.
Can you bring in intelligence here after attention?
Well, this intelligence eventually, its origin is the unlimited. That's what I'm saying.
And so is insight.
Insight, yeah. And the unlimited can act within the limited. The unlimited can act in the brain to bring it to order, to change its cells. That's what Krishnamurti is suggesting. Right?
So we had some cell changes today.
Maybe. You see, you can't sort of watch it and see how the cells have changed.
You can't watch that.
In the absence of all division is love, isn't it? Unity.
Yes, well, it's intelligence, it's beauty, it's all that, you see. And
not without cause. Because cause is already division.
Cause is division, yes, between cause and effect and so on, you see. And
Unity there?
what?
Unity sounds like parts.
Well, yes, it's wholeness, it's totality, you see, it's...
Unity of life?
It's the wholeness of life. You'll put it more accurately. You see, the oneness. You see, it's which includes all the distinctions and divisions, right?
Is that the vertical line you were speaking?
Yeah.
And then, would you give us an example of? Did you say there was a line in the middle?
Yeah. Well, somewhere in between, you might be working where something new is coming, creative is coming in, but some repetition is coming in too, some recreation. So that there's a range of experience, a very broad range, where you're somewhere in between, right?
Would that be something limited in terms of creativity, as Krishnamurti said? Like
well, it would be a limited, but it would be necessary for many activities, right? See, I wouldn't want to suggest that we have either two possibilities, the unlimited or the limited. Saying, either you're in this mechanical sphere or you're in this tremendous thing, right?
We have to be combined.
That's in between, right?
Would that be something like limited creation that Kay spoke of as in painting?
It would include that, yes. It would include all sorts of things. If we are making a better school or a better society, you can't be in the mechanical altogether, nor can you be in this totally unlimited. I mean, you have to be cognizant of time and purpose and all that, right?
Why would we even make that separation between?
That's what I'm trying to say. There's no separation. You're in between always, and you can move toward one or the other. You see, so when you have nothing special to accomplish, you might tend to move toward the making time and moving toward the present moment with time less and less important, right? Is that clear what I'm trying to say? Then that we don't want to establish this sharp separation between the unlimited and the limited.
We need them both.
Well, the unlimited is the limited, and the limited is the unlimited, right?
Distinction's the barrier for movement.
Yeah. But we're generally, if we want to make that distinction, we will find that we're generally somewhere in between. But when we're doing it, why should we bother to make it, right?
It's like a boat on the ocean. The boat has the function of sustaining the organism, but the function of the boat is to be on the ocean, not to sustain. They seem to have a tremendous relationship, and not to have a relationship between the two it would be dysfunction. We are the boat on this ocean of infinity, and not to have a relationship with.
Well, but we are related because we are floating in this ocean, right? We are supported by the ocean. You see, and we are coming. It's more deeper than that. That the boat is constructed on the land, but we have been coming out of we have come out of the ocean, and we are going back into it. You see.
It's easy to see what it might be like in the limited and what it might be like in the semi-limited or semi-infinite. What might we be like in the limited and the
At the vertical line.
Well, I think we have to be careful not to over-define it, but we're merely suggesting this, which I think will, if we take this seriously, it will change our approach to the limited as well, right? That because we say that ultimately, we can see now that this question of values, for example, is different from what we thought, right? That there's not going to be a solution of it in the limited.
So, David, when we set aside or don't function in value limitations, value judgments, I guess I want that word, we might then be operating in this unlimited tension on the vertical axis.
Yeah.
And then our perceptions are pure. What are we seeing then? We're not even involved with spatter, are we?
In what?
We're able to essentially bypass the spatter.
Yeah.
The dirt on the wood chip.
Yeah, the dirt cannot penetrate that, you see.
We can actually, because that's sort of the personal happening.
What?
That's sort of what has happened in a personal happening for me. I won't call it an experience because it's repetitive. Where there's just a perfect action and it's not my action. I mean, this thing is being operated by what I would call life. And so I have no knowledge of what's going to be said. My voice says something and it happens to be psychologically correct, but it wasn't generated by Ray. And and this goes on for hours and sometimes, and there are no errors made, and there's no hurt. It's impossible for anybody to say anything to this person, this non-person.
Yeah, the hurt can only be in the sphere of thought, in the sphere of the image and the value. Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, it all goes away.
So transformation comes from clarity.
Well, I don't know. See, I think we needn't even call the thing transformation. You see, we're merely looking at this thing, and without, if you form a goal of transforming, you've gone back into time. You see, and merely we're exploring the question: what is the nature of this whole process? And we not necessarily have finished it. You see, we have merely started it, right? And and this thing will, if you see that this process, that it has value, you see, to explore this, right? Therefore, you will have interest and energy to do it, right? Now, without necessarily thinking of where it's going to lead and whether you'll benefit from it or not. See, I can come back to this work of art saying, what is its value, you see? You see, let's say Leonardo painted these pictures. What value do they have, right? They have millions of dollars of value, but where do you find the value, you see? Now, what goal do they accomplish? How do they help us?
Has to have some relationship with that unknown.
Yeah.
So I was trying to say about music, that if it has a relationship with the unknown, and it somehow communicates with our brain, that's what I meant by no movement. There may be mechanical movement and stuff, but the actual music feels like motion, but there's no real, it gives this feeling, and that causes this reaction, which is in relationship maybe to the unknown, is what I would say.
So are we bringing this down to feeling now?
Well, it's more, feeling is just a word, you see. It includes the unlimited includes feeling, it includes thought. Anything that could be a feeling, if it's distinguished from anything else, is limited, right? Right?
It would include sound and vibrations also.
What?
It would also include sound and vibrations.
Yeah. You see, so feeling is, once you define the word, you see, and distinguish it from something else, then it's limited, right? Now, I'm saying that there is something of the quality of the unlimited, and which will include all these. It doesn't mean thought is out of it, you see. You see, we're saying thought doesn't dominate it, that's control it and all that, but thought is part of this unlimited, right?
As a function of the unlimited, it wouldn't have any problem. But somehow we've caused an aberration here that is our whole existence.
Thought tries to grasp the unlimited and takes its own creations having the value of the unlimited, and therefore it wrecks everything, right? Yeah, as long as thought values its own creation as the unlimited, it will not be able to do anything right, because it will impose itself on everything, right?
Back to the painting example, though, it seems that the people who determine whether a painting is great or not will have to stand in front of it and get this crossover, this feeling from it, are unable to do that from a picture of the painting or a transparency
is that right?
of the painting. That's impossible. It has to be the painting which they view before they get this feeling.
Let's call it a perception, you see, that it's something which may include feeling and thought and various other things, and, all sorts of sensitivity. And now, well, anyway, perhaps we'll see if we can finish on, the unlimited, see, we have to get straight as to our attitude and approach to the unlimited, right? You cannot avoid this, you see, by saying you're only limited, right? Because the brain won't allow you to do it, right? And you'll merely get caught in another way by giving unlimited value to something limited, right? Whether it be money or power or fame or something else. But saying it's important for thought. Let's see, to be able to think of this problem in a consistent way. If thought is not consistent about this, it will tangle up with it again and again, right? In spite of your intentions not to tangle. Is that clear? You're in the web whether you like it or not. And therefore, working on this to clear it up is important. You see that we have got to have a thought with regard to the unlimited, which does not entangle you in confusion and contradiction, right? Which will get you back in the mess again, right? And see, I think it's consistent. You cannot make the whole story consistent unless you say in your thought that the unlimited is. And from there, various things follow, like saying the unlimited contains the limited, and so on, or includes the limited, overlaps the limited, right? And then we can say things about time and space and things like that a certain amount, but we now have to explore that, but we have to get firmly based in this, you see, because the whole habit is quite different. And therefore that requires this work, which goes back to all we've been talking about of self-deception and the ego and the observer and the observed and value judgments and suspending all his anger and value judgments and so on. You see, all of that is part of the work, right? If that is not done, then you will create the illusion of the unlimited.
It's a feeling for how small all of the stuff we have to work on is in comparison to the unlimited, or in relationship to when we walk out the door. Everything will be just back into that old framework. It isn't like you can sustain a feeling of that hold thought in abeyance, because you are the thought that's trying to hold itself in abeyance. So it's sort of it has to be an unraveling.
Yeah, it's not thought in abeyance. You see, thought has understood its own limits, therefore it does not try to go into the unlimited, right? Because it understands the futility and the meaninglessness of it, the destructiveness of it, and so on. And thought is not going into abeyance; it's working perfectly well, where it has to work. But it simply understands and knows very deeply. Let's say we have, that it has no place. It cannot go into the unlimited. Beyond saying, but it has to say there is the unlimited, you see.
Plus there is a sense of the unlimited.
Yeah, there may be a sense of it, there may be all that, but when thought begins to go to define the unlimited, it starts to put limitations on the unlimited, right?
And then back out the door.
Yeah, so therefore, let's put it in a very simple way, that the process of limitation has no place in the unlimited.
You say that silence is in the unlimited.
What?
Silence.
Well, then thought will remain silent except where it should speak. You see that? But I think, thought is the process of limitation. If we mean by the word thought that, which seems reasonable, then simply say limitation has no place in the unlimited, which seems to follow. And then that makes it clear. Now, the point is we are so conditioned that this process of limitation is constantly trying to limit the unlimited and grasp it and so on, and that creates all this trouble we've been saying. And we have got to work on it. We've got to actually not... We have been grasping it in a certain way now, or dealing with it, but we have got to grasp it in all its aspects in everyday life and so on, where the tendency is all the time to do that.
Would you even say the unlimited is here?
The unlimited includes here, I don't know, you see. But it is here, it is now, and so on. But if we say that is all there is to it, then I think we would be in trouble.
There's nothing we could talk about that wouldn't be part of the unlimited.
Yeah.
And yet, we can't build a bridge between the limited and the unlimited by limited.
Well, there's rather silly to build a bridge to something which is indissolubly, to bridge something where there's nothing, right. No gap to bridge, right? Like building.
But there seems to be a tendency to...
Yeah, but because of the belief, there's a big gap, right, which needs to be bridged, right? That's part of the thought.
Limitation is division, like psychological division.
Yes.
We're breaking up fragmentation.
Yes, well, when it's used wrongly, you see. And if you just remember that limitation has no place in the unlimited, right? Which is very simple. And I think maybe we could sort of end on that point.